Kids, won't you step outside for a second?
I think it's safe to say a game that a heap of people have been patiently waiting for is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And thanks to my mates at Plaion ANZ, I got to check it out. And while it is a visually stunning game with in-depth characters, stories, attention to detail, on top of being a game that will continuously suck you in to play a few more hours after you've decided you want to stop for the night, I've never been so conflicted with a game before. But why?
This guy, this is not my kind of guy.
Developed by Warhorse Studios, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which I'll just refer to as Deliverance 2 from here on out, is a sequel to the first entry in their series in Kingdom Come Deliverance, and it follows the character of Henry, where the story starts off with a simple delivery mission that, well, doesn't go down simply.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
Henry, who's acting as a bodyguard and an escort to a Sir Hans Capon, a character that many people love from the first game, but I'll get back to that. But Hans, Henry, and their crew are out to deliver a letter to a lord. They get attacked by bandits, robbed of said important letter, and both Hans and Henry face off against some bandits, and Henry ends up taking a bit of a tumble off a cliff.
Took a little tumble off the cliff.
Now from here, after losing this important letter, we also end up losing all of our clothes, our horses, our weapons. Basically, we lose everything we own, and we can't get into the castle to meet the Lord because, well, we look like peasants. And from this, we need to find a creative way to meet this Lord outside of trying to get inside of his castle, because that's just not gonna happen. And this ends up being a open mission chain, if you will, to get invited to a wedding that this Lord will be attending.
I just want a bicycle!
Why are you yelling at me?
The opening premise for the story is relatively straightforward, and Deliverance 2 is a sequel, and this game tends to assume that you have played the first in the series, and that you know who these characters are. But if, like me, you didn't touch the first entry in the series, or you didn't touch the first game at all, it doesn't take long to figure out a bit of who's who in the zoo a little, and what characters you may or may not like. Now, after Henry takes this fall off a cliff, he is then nursed back to health, and the, say, opening 3 hours or so of the game is literally tutorial-based, teaching you how to use your weapons, how to pick up herbs, how to follow and complete quests, and, well, survive in the world, really.
You fucking little bastard!
And that's overly sort of the gameplay for Deliverance 2. Now, yeah, there is a story, and we're playing as the character of Henry rather than making our own character, but you, as Henry, are surviving in a unforgiving, realistic medieval world. Weapons will do some serious damage if you're not careful. Wearing heavy armor is slow and cumbersome and loud. You can hear it clanking together when you move around. Travel at night is dangerous, and facing off against multiple enemies can be a serious uphill struggle, or at least it was for me.
You know something? You suck.
Now, if you saw my first impressions video on Deliverance 2, well, then you'll know that I said that this game is impressive, and don't get me wrong, it is. The world is pretty damn stunning with its environments, its character models, its inventory system, the fact that you have to clean your clothes and clean Henry because he can stink and his clothes can get dirty and covered in blood. The combat is in-depth and requires your full attention, and hell, the dialogue in the game from the main story mission and side missions are properly impressive. And I don't know why the amount of swearing that happens in this game I found kinda funny.
Go fuck yourself!
But I think in order to enjoy Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, there are a couple of requirements. Firstly, you need to play the first entry in this series, I think, because Deliverance 2 doesn't hold your hand or give you a recap on what previously happened. It's sort of like, say, jumping into the second season of, say, Sopranos, or maybe Game of Thrones might be a better analogy, but the game doesn't give you a recap, just like how some popular TV shows don't give you a recap on the previous season. And it's the same thing here. This game assumes that you have played the entry before it. Secondly, Deliverance 2 is a hard game. It's a pretty fucking hard game. It's a bit like, say, Elden Ring in its difficulty, but it is a first-person medieval RPG. A bit like, what's that game called again? But the combat I found was also quite similar to, say, For Honor, where you need to pay attention to enemy stances and where they're striking or guarding, and Deliverance 2 will require a lot of your attention and time. This is a proper in-depth RPG and isn't really for casuals, if you will.
You know what? I have a ball. Perhaps you'd like to bounce it.
Now, speaking quickly just on combat, but I found myself really struggling when facing off against more than one enemy at a time. Now, during the opening few hours of the game, the combat felt tough, but fair. Like I could take my time with my enemies, plan my attacks, and I would either die for making too many mistakes or charging into combat and not paying attention. But sort of during the early moments of the story, just past the prologue, I would fast travel from one area to another, and the fast travel system here is pretty cool, and I actually kind of like how it works. Now, just quickly, fast travel doesn't just teleport you to where you want to go or where you've been. Instead, fast travel is Henry quickly moving through the country, and you can easily get stopped by bandits and raiders on the road, and travelling at night I found was more dangerous and more frequent for this to happen. Anyways, I'd fast travel, I'd fight bandits on the road, and a bit like, say, Pokemon, you have the option to, say, avoid conflict and run away, or you can stand and fight. Now, I would get stopped by 2 bandits on the road constantly at the start of the game, with no real success at getting away. And with the gear I started with, or the gear that you sort of start with, because this is a single-player RPG, it kind of made it hard to face off against multiple enemies, and these bandits, at least one of them would have some kind of armor and also be wielding a shield, so it was quite hard.
Oh, poor baby.
So with this, I would die, and I failed a fair few times, and the saving and respawning system, or the loading from a previous save, sort of did my head in a bit, and the only way to save the game is by using a savior schnapps, which is basically booze that will save the game, or by sleeping in a bed that Henry owns, or by progressing in a story mission. Now, it seems kind of straightforward, yeah? Well, the raiders on the road basically had me restart 20 minutes prior to any time I died to them, and this was around the start of the game, and I died maybe 5 to 6 times just from the raiders on the road. So having to discover a town 5 to 6 times, then die constantly anytime I tried to fast travel, it got pretty annoying pretty quick, and it sort of turned into a moment of, well, going to bed in real life, not in the game, and trying again tomorrow. So having spent maybe about an hour and a half just having to rediscover towns, I decided to, say, maybe ditch the fast travel and walk everywhere. And the walking mechanics, while yeah, it's a bit slow walking around everywhere, especially at the start of the game, this game is properly impressive and pretty. And maybe about 5-6 hours into the game, you will unlock your horse, things get faster, things sort of speed and ramp up as you keep going in the game, which I kind of like that, but I would roam around the world sort of manually rather than using fast travel until I got to either my bed, I progressed in a story mission so it would autosave, or until I made a savior schnapps. And then when I felt it was safe, then I would play around with the travel system. And if I thought it was only, dangerous to fast travel at night time, during the day I would fast travel, and then at night time I would move around myself, avoiding people on the road or avoiding anything I could see. And it wasn't just the raiders on the road that were my problem as well. There was one story mission that I think maybe took 8 or 9 attempts for me to wrap up. Now, I'm not going to spoil the mission for you, but there is a fun mission, sure. But this mission chain sort of wraps up by either siding with a well-armed singular knight, he's properly kitted up, or by working with 3 other knights who aren't heavily as kitted up, but you can side with these 3 other knights to take on the heavily armoured one. And at first, I decided to side with these 3 knights to take on the heavily armoured guy, and while the 3 knights did most of the heavy lifting, we managed to take him out, only for these other 3 knights to immediately start attacking me for no reason at all, and as I was already nearly dead, I didn't stand a chance, I died, I had to reload from a previous save that was 20 minutes earlier. And look, I repeated this mission 9 times.
9 times?
So listening to the same dialogue, having to use my horse and find that dirt trail, all of it, 9 times.
9 times.
I tried siding with a heavily armoured knight and then taking on the other 3, and the other 3 knights would just gang up on me and sort of kill me immediately, just disregarding the heavily armoured guy. When I finally got around to killing the heavy knights with the 3 other knights, I decided, well, I've killed him, I'm taking his armour. And these knights started attacking me because I've stolen from them, so I had to reload the save again and spend another 20 minutes to get back to where I was.
Really?
Yes, really.
And so with that, my brain was kind of racking around of, while I couldn't steal from a dead foe where I normally could, I'd side with the larger force only for them to attack me afterwards. I couldn't side with the heavily armoured knight because they'd just ignore that heavily armoured knight and attack me, and after so many attempts, I just let the 3 other knights take on the heavily armoured guy while I just sat there and did nothing, and somehow they let me live. I kinda like cheesed a mission to get past it. But this is just one example of me repeating a mission over and over and over again until somehow I got past it. And there were a few missions that weren't even combat based that I repeated a couple of times. It just kind of like I ran out of time and the mission failed, or I accidentally started a fist fight and that caused the mission to end. And I'm still going on about combat here, I'm sorry, but this is sort of what you can expect with these kind of games and how hard it can be. But I also found the combat system to be a little bit unfair in some instances, and it was a bit strange. Now, as Henry, I would wear a bit of armor to give myself protection in combat, and I found it weird that he could sprint around town or out in the world for about 15 seconds or so before he would get tired and his stamina would start to restore pretty quickly. But then, in combat, I'd get tired after like 2 to 3 swings from a sword and just be completely exhausted and sort of left myself open for attacks. But then I'd also face off against bandits on the road and they just continuously swing their sword at me as if they were playing like Devil May Cry, and I'm like, I'm waiting for you to get tired. You should get tired so I can swing back at you. This is the trade we're playing here. And it just didn't work for me.
Something's missing!
Something's missing, all right.
So with that, I think it's kind of safe to say that I struggled with some of the moments in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. However, there are elements in this game that really, really impressed me. And that's what sort of kept me coming back to it. And firstly, it's the potion and alchemy system and the sort of the level of crafting. Because crafting in any other game outside of this, I don't find fun, but here, I sort of couldn't be stopped in some instances. And for alchemy, you need to gather relevant ingredients, refer to a potion book, and you have to boil and pour and grind ingredients and place them into potion vials, and it kind of felt like, or maybe more so, reminded me of Overcooked, because you kind of need to keep an eye on what you're doing and how long things are boiling for, and it was kind of a fun micro game. However, I really enjoyed the blacksmithing in the game, having to heat up metal, beat it into a shape, reheat the metal, then submerge it in water to sort of lock it all in place, and for it to just be an interactive process that uses your stamina and timing, and I don't know why, I really enjoyed the blacksmithing and making something as simple as a horseshoe. But the storytelling, the characters, the dialogue, the world, it's all really super impressive. There are some characters like Sir Hans I didn't overly gel with or overly like, but I think that's more so, say, a testament to the acting and the writing in this game. Now, chatting with a couple of mates of mine, apparently you learn to love Sir Hans in the first game, so that might be something to sort of look at here and maybe why I didn't get along with him. But what really surprised me with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as well, after constantly dying, having to start 20 minutes back multiple times, yes, I was getting angry. Yes, I was hitting Alt F4 so hard my screen would wobble, but I found myself continuously coming back for more. There were some story moments, character developments, and even some puzzles that had me intrigued, and moments where I'd sort of given up, I'd found some second wind somehow. And there were moments where Mrs. Duty would keep saying, "Why are you returning to this game if it's making you so frustrated and angry?" And I think it's just because you can just fall into this immersive world.
She just dislikes me so much. It's irresistible.
I can see that.
Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a brilliant, technical masterpiece where NPCs just don't stand around and wait for you to interact with them. They will eat, they will drink, they will spend time with their families, they will go to the tavern, but they will run their shop during the day. It's all pretty damn cool. And I've seen people explain that this series you aren't, say, the main character. You are Henry, and you are just another character in this world. There is no power trip fantasy in this game where you can get more powerful to the point where you can basically kill everyone in a town or an entire army by yourself, sort of like Skyrim. But these games are more so like, say, Dungeons and Dragons, in that you experience this hard world and you kind of have to learn to love it and survive with it, and I can kind of see that. However though, I just don't overly think it's a game for me. Now, don't mince my words here, it is a brilliant game, and I've seen a couple of mates love what they've played with Deliverance 2, and one friend of mine who was super keen on it, and fuck me, there are 1,001 other people out there that are super excited for this, and I am stoked for you because I reckon you'll love this. But for me, I didn't really gel with it. In fact, Deliverance 2 actually had me pick up and replay Skyrim a little bit. However though, if you are super keen to know more and everything there is about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, with guides, reviews and much more, go check out my mate Norza. That dude's got your back like a butt crack when it comes to this game, and he's got a 41-minute review on his channel and heaps of guides. But for me, this game is also like, say, Baldur's Gate 3. It is a brilliant game that thousands of people love, and I can totally see why everyone likes it and why they are hooked on it. It just wasn't my jam though, and sometimes that's completely fine. But whether you can't wait to check out Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, or you're on the fence about checking it out because you didn't play the first entry in the series, always remember to play with each other and play with yourself.
The adventure I was expecting was a fuck or two.